Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gaming Medley here, and today we're going to be talking about how Tribes Ascend has finally gotten a new team of devs. So for those of you who don't know, Tribes Ascend was the fourth iteration in the Tribes series. Its predecessors were Tribes 1 and 2 and Tribes Vengeance. And Tribes became a rather beloved shooter. It focuses mostly on gliding through the air with a jetpack, skiing down slopes at extremely high speeds, and using weapons called spin fusers that launch discs to try and kill your enemies. The reason that the Tribes games became so popular was that they relied more on skill than pretty much any other shooter out there. The discs had significant travel time, which meant that you had to actually time your shots, and if you wanted to hit somebody moving through the air at around 300 kilometers an hour with a disc that was moving at about half that rate, it certainly wasn't going to be easy for you. Tribes Ascend was fairly well received when it came out, and I myself played the game for several dozens and probably at least 100 and something hours, and it was fairly well received. The game was slightly criticized by older Tribes fans for having bullet weapons where you could actually use, say, a chain gun if you were playing a certain class, and other classes as well had submachine gun and assault rifle type weapons. But the bullets were not hit scanned, they didn't travel instantly to where your crosshairs were, and you still had to calculate significantly for bullet drop as well as travel time of your bullets when you were playing those games, making even bullet-based classes such as the sniper significantly harder to play. So Tribes Ascend came out to a fairly positive reception from the Tribes community. Several YouTubers such as Total Biscuit promoted it heavily and did voice packs for it and things, and overall people really seemed to like it, which made it all the more heartbreaking when Hi-Rez Studios, the developer, dropped the project completely in favor of their new and upcoming title, Smite, which as most of you know is a third-person action MOBA, the only one of its kind, and has actually risen up to become one of the more successful MOBAs along with Dota 2 and League of Legends. Not nearly as big as those two other titans of the genre, but definitely a strong competitor and a valid entry into the MOBA field. Now with Smite's success, Hi-Rez Studios has said that they finally have the opportunity to go back to Tribes Ascend and now have a team of 4 to 5 people working on the game, and are releasing a new patch for the game soon that will modify the classes and the grind to unlock weapons. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed Tribes Ascend a lot. I played it very addictively for quite a long time after it came out, and I still tried to go back to it even a few years later, only to discover that it was completely dead and nobody played except for the super hardcore people, and I was just getting shot out of the air somehow with spin fuser discs every time I would try to do anything, which wasn't very fun, so I left again. However, I really enjoyed the game very immensely. I got fairly good at it when I was playing it a lot, and the sheer amount of skill and cooperation that was required in that game to do well really made it a much more interesting experience for me than any other shooters I had played in the vein of, say, Call of Duty or Battlefield. And as a result, I ended up enjoying it much more and actually really ended up liking the game. So it was very sad to me when Hi-Rez announced that they were just completely cutting support of the game in order to go work on Smite. It burned a lot of people really bad. A lot of people who would have played Smite actually didn't, because they didn't trust Hi-Rez, and there's no reason to, really. I mean, Hi-Rez has a history of just cutting their games loose and dry if they don't make money. It's what they did with Global Agenda, which was their titular game kind of before they released Tribes. It didn't make them enough money, so they just cut it high and dry. Now, the other thing that burned a lot of people was Hi-Rez hadn't exactly had the best free-to-play model with Tribes Ascend. Eventually, they released an option where you could just buy everything in the game for $20 to $30. Before that, it would cost $7 to $8 for any particular weapon, and keep in mind that they released a lot of weapons, and these weapons would initially be very overpowered as if to entice people to buy them, and then get nerfed significantly right after the majority of the sales had gone on, which made a lot of people think that Hi-Rez was just releasing magnificently overpowered weapons so that people would pay for them, and then after they got all the money they wanted from the product, they would just pare the weapons down to a point where they would actually be on par with other weapons in the game. Now, of course, this is hard to verify. Nobody at Hi-Rez is going to come out and say, yes, we intentionally released overpowered weapons, but many people feel like it's a strong possibility. It's interesting to me that they're having a team go back to Tribes Ascend and work on it. I think that personally it's too late. So does the president of Hi-Rez, by the way. He said that they don't assume that they will be making any money off of this, which is good. because they probably won't be. Smite is a huge cash cow for them right now, and it will be for a long time. They keep upgrading the game with various graphics patches and patches in general, and Smite is actually a really good game. I play that quite a lot too, despite my marred feelings towards Hi-Rez after what they did to Tribes Ascend. So it's not like they need to make money from Tribes Ascend in order to keep up development on it. However, I can't help but wonder if this is just a PR stunt in an attempt to gain back some of the goodwill they lost from their veteran community. Because after they released Global Agenda and then left it, they lost some goodwill from their community, but they still had fairly hardcore fans who went from Global Agenda to Tribes, and a lot of those people left after they cut Tribes loose. Because if you cut a game loose once, that might be acceptable in some circumstances. If you start to make it a habit of just cutting your games loose, people will start to lose faith in your company. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of older players of the Tribes series who had played Tribes 1 and 2 and Tribes Vengeance didn't like Tribes Ascend as much because they felt like it was less skill-based than its predecessors and a little bit less hardcore. Personally, I was fine with that because obviously, in today's market, when you have games like Call of Duty or Battlefield coming out, which are all hit-scan weapons, which require 1 or 2 hits to your opponent to kill them, players aren't necessarily going to be able to dive into a game where it takes significantly more hits to kill a person, and also where you have to lead your target significantly, and also where you have to manage your speed. An entire part of the Tribes franchise obviously is skiing, which is where you would hold down spacebar while you were traveling down a surface, and you would essentially accelerate to speeds of up to 200 to 300 miles an hour. And obviously the mechanic behind this was when you were going down a hill, you would ski down it and accelerate as much as you could, and then when you reached the dip and started to reach the apex of the next hill, you would use your jetpack in order to gain some air and then try to hit the beginning of the next hill on a downward slope so you could constantly maintain that momentum of 200 to 300 kilometers an hour for the faster classes. Obviously less for that for the heavier classes in the game, and this made the game incredibly fast, which when added to the fact that it was already a highly skill-based game due to the fact that all of the weapon ammunition had travel time you would need to calculate, made the game an incredibly fast-paced and explosive yet enjoyable experience. In addition, the class variation was great. You would have classes like the Sniper, who obviously snipes people, the Infiltrator, who would go into bases and plant essentially C4 and sticky grenades in order to blow up the enemy's generator. You had classes like the Doombringer, who would be able to put down force fields and protect your flag and to capture the flag mode. You had classes like the Brute, which had disco grenades, aka fractal grenades, which were grenades that would essentially pop and shoot out spikes of light that look kind of like a disco ball, refracting light on all of those shoots of light would do damage. The game had a lot of variety and it had a lot of skill, which is why a lot of people were very interested in playing it, and because of the business practices that Hi-Rez associated themselves with through the course of the game's development, it burned a lot of people really badly when they stopped development on the game because they had spent so much money on the game for the newest weapons, because the in-game grind to get enough in-game currency to buy anything was quite frankly fairly atrocious. Overall, I'm not sure if they can actually pull this off. Obviously, I don't think many fans will be coming back. I don't know how many people this new patch will make the game accrue. My guess would be not very many, if any significant amount of people. But I mean, I'll definitely load it up just to see if anybody's in there, and if there are, I might play a few matches for you guys. If not, then just another failed attempt at a game on Hi-Rez's roster. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Feel free to like the video, dislike if you think this video deserves a dislike. Also feel free to leave a like, a comment, a share, a favorite, a sub, or whatever else you think this video deserves, such as mailing me, I don't know, dog shit. Thank you all so much for watching. GM.